Hello, welcome to episode 2 of Cryonaut.tv. My name's Jake from Cryonaut Media, and today I'm going to go over layering with you guys. Now there's two main uses of layering in today's music production. The first is for layering synths to get a full and big, interesting sound, and the second is to layer drums for more of the same reasons. This is going to be a two-part video series, so in this part I'm going to focus on layering synths, and in the next video we'll go over drums. So commonly, you're going to layer synths to get a good bass sound or maybe a good chord sound. You can do it for leads, you can do it for anything, but I think basses and chords are very common because it's hard to get both a high and a low end that really stand out by just using one instrument. So when you layer stuff, you can have multiple different layers that really can stand out and stand on their own. So I have a bass patch that I've come up with here, and this is kind of what it sounds like. So there's actually 3 different layers in this one. You can see down here I've got an instrument rack with a high, mids, and a low. And I'll go over a little bit about this here in a minute, but basically we have a low sound. Pretty simple. And then a mid. And then the high. So when you put them all together, it sounds like this. Alright, now the reason you're going to be doing this, again, is that in one patch it would be really hard to get all these different elements at the same time. So when you have the low end, you really want it to be just the bass, not too many high frequencies, so that you can really bring out that low frequencies and, really make it stand out. The mid kind of gives it a little bit more bite to it, and then the high can really add some nice harmonics at the top. You can add some cool effects to it, whatever you want to do. Now, one of the really huge benefits to layering is you can add different effects to each layer. So let's see, on the mid layer here, I'm using Serum. I have some distortion. If you add distortion to just the low end, it could easily become very muddy and just sound bad. So you want to leave the low end typically very clean and no effects on it. But the mids and highs, it's all yours. Go for whatever you want. Now on the high end, I have some distortion again and some delay. Now delay, if you put it on the low end, delay and reverb are 2 things you really want to keep off of your basses in general. But when you layer, you can add those effects to the high end or even the mids. And it adds a really cool effect. So you can kind of hear it there as the tail fades off. It's only on the high end that you have the delay. So that just brings a lot more interest to your sound, a lot more character. So when you're going to go create this, just keep that in mind, that you can actually do different things for each layer. You don't have to keep them all the same. Let your creativity just do whatever you want. So now when you're going to create one of these, I would start off with just 3 layers. You can do more, you can do less, it's up to you. But if you're not really familiar with all these things, it's very hard to mix it at times, and getting the EQing right can be a pain. So I would recommend starting with 3. So do your high, your mid, and your low. Go ahead and put in your sounds, do what you want, use whatever synth you want, it doesn't matter. A lot of this process is going to be very subjective, so whatever you think sounds good, whatever you want to do, whatever fits your song better, do it. You don't have to do anything that I'm doing here. It can be, totally different if you want. But I'd recommend starting with 3 layers. Dial in your sounds a little bit, get roughly something that sounds towards the high end, something in the middle, and something towards the low end. And then go ahead and put an EQ on each one of them. Now for your high, you're going to want to cut out all the frequencies that are probably past the midway point, roughly. This is going to depend on your sound, obviously, but you want to only have the high end going through. No low end at all, and maybe a little bit of the mids, but not very much. And then in the middle section, you're going to do the same kind of thing, cut out the very low and the very high frequencies and leave more of the middle. And then the low, you're going to cut out most of the high and mids. And you, depending on your low patch, you may want to boost the lows just a little bit too. So basically each layer is only letting through that section of frequencies to the final sound. And the reason that's important is if you don't do this, you're going to have basically 3 separate patches that are all having highs, all having mids, and all having lows. And it's going to be very muddy, very just confusing. It's going to sound bad, trust me. So by EQing these out, you're allowing only those great frequencies for each patch to come through. Then at the end, what you're going to want to do is add a little compressor. Now, as you can see, it's only doing a tiny bit of compression. You don't need much. You just want a little bit to kind of glue it together, hence the glue compressor. So each layer will kind of just come together and make a really nice, solid sound. Now, another really cool use of layering is when you layer a synth patch with some real instrument, say piano keys or strings or something like that. I have one of those over here. So I have some keys and a synth. So here's what that sounds like. So you have the real instrument, which people can, identify and can really enjoy, and then you have the synth, which kind of gives it that new, edgy kind of feel. So any kind of synth patch you want, or any kind of real instrument you want, when you layer them together, it brings a whole new sound to your track, to your song. So something else you can play with. It can be a lot of fun there. Just real quick, if you're using Ableton Live, one of the awesome tools that are in there is the instrument rack. This helps immensely with layering sounds because you don't have to create more tracks over and over and over. You can just have one track with a bunch of different layers all built in. So what you're going to do, let's say analog, we can drop it in here. And then this little button right over here, the third one down, you click that, and then you have your different layers here. So then let's throw in operator. You drag it in, all of a sudden you got 2 layers. Now, as you saw, mine didn't say analog and operator, so you can click it, Control R, Command R, and type in high, whatever you want to call it. And you can do this as many times as you want. You can come in here and duplicate them, Command D, Control D. So you can have a whole bunch of different layers. Again, if you're starting out, I'd recommend just 3. Keep it simple. No need to get crazy here. You'll thank me later when you have to mix just in here plus the whole track. So just start with that. Now, let's say you have an awesome sound dialed up and you don't have an instrument rack. You just did it in Serum or Analog or whatever. What you can do is click on the instrument here, and then Control G, Command G will put it in an instrument rack, and then again click this button. You'll see it right there. So super helpful. You don't have to worry about losing your preset you saved or saving it as a preset and then loading it back in. That's complicated. Just Command G, Control G, add it to a group. So one other thing you have to keep in mind when layering synths is you have to really mix the sounds, the layers within your track. So within this one track, you've got to come layer these, these 3 in this case layers. So you'll see I have these 2 turned down quite a bit. This one left at 0. The reason is if you have these all at 0, some of the sounds get left out. In this case, the low end. So because it's so simple and quiet, it's very easy to get lost. So by lowering these 2, now you can hear all 3 layers again. So just keep that in mind, a really important part of it. Probably one of the 2 most important, along with EQing each layer. So just go through each layer and make sure that each one is audible. Make sure that no one layer is standing out more than the others, unless of course you want that to be the case. But just use the mixing right in here to go ahead and do that. So there you go. It's a pretty quick video on how to layer synths. Again, most of this is very subjective. It's all going to be what sounds good to you, what sounds good in your track. So, anyone who makes a video on layering, you're not going to want to copy them exactly because it's only going to work with just the thing that they've created. So you need to really do whatever sounds good in your track and then be creative with it. Don't just copy everybody else. Come up with your own sounds, come up with your own layers. Maybe add delay to something, add reverb to something else. It doesn't matter. Experiment with this. Just keep trying new things. This is an awesome way to come up with your own unique sound that no one else has come up with, because you're going to have your own layers here, which means that if anyone else is going to try and copy your sound, they're going to have to come up with basically the same layers, the same effects, the same patches, the same instruments, and that's just really hard to do. So by layering like this, it's really easy to come up with your own sound that no one else has. It makes you stand out a lot more out there, and it just brings a lot more interest to your song, to your sounds. So give this a shot. Leave me a comment, send me a message, whatever, with some of your layers that you've come up with, just by themselves or in a song even. I'd love to hear what you guys come up with. So until next time, I'm Jake from Cryonaut Media. See you later.